Welcome back to Vic's Projects, everyone. I hope you're well. You join me back in the Jaguar MK2 trying to make this thing my daily driver. And now that we're getting into the winter in the UK, things start to get a bit cold and they start to get a bit damp, which means we actually need a heater. In a Jaguar MK2, the heater box lives just here in the engine bay. And if you look a bit closer at our one, you'll notice that it's not actually connected at all. Why is that? Well, when I redid the engine and put everything all back in, I noticed that the original heater core was actually leaking. So I just blanked that one off, ready for this moment where we're going to come back and sort all this out. So our first job is to simply take this all out. So this is our heater box, and it's pretty simple really. You've got a motor here to waft some air around. We've got a valve which controls how much hot water goes from the engine around our heater matrix, which lives inside there. And then under here we've got a little trap door that controls the recirculation, so whether it draws fresh air from the outside or whether it recirculates around the cabin. And that's it. A few springs and bits and pieces. So let's start tearing into her. Okay, she's now all apart and on the bench, and the first thing I'm going to talk about is this old heat exchanger. And this thing is the reason why all of this never went back in the car when I rebuilt put the rebuilt engine in, because this old girl is leaking. Now it would be quite nice to get this thing repaired. There are still companies out there that do it, but I'm not sure there's anyone close to me. So I started looking around to see if I can get replacements. And I came across a company doing aluminium ones. I'll put a link to them down in the description below. Now, aluminium is going to be a lot lighter than these original radiators. Aluminium's a pretty good thermal conductor, but the copper ones on this, the copper fins, are actually going to perform a little bit better. But overall, these are still really good radiators. As soon as we're losing a little bit of performance, the next thing we're going to look at is how do we gain some of that back. So this is the blower motor and fan, and even back in the day these things were considered absolutely rubbish. I don't think time has done them any favours. So let's do a little bit of experiment and see what condition these are in. Oh. I don't know if that's coming across, but that does not sound like a healthy motor at all. It's putting out what? 1.6 amps, 20 watts. 20 watts. That is not going to clear your windscreen. Okay, right, be quiet. That is not going to clear your windscreen. We're going to need something that will. Now this is a blower motor out of a modern car. Well, I say modern car. It's a Ford Mondeo from, I think, the year 2000, something like that. Anyway, it was £20 off eBay. So let's see just what modern technology can do. Whoa, that's a lot quieter. It's, what's that? Topping out 120 watts, and that is moving. Okay, that is moving a lot of air. Now, even though this is a much nicer blower motor, it's all balanced, a lot quieter, it's a lot bigger than this one, I don't think it's going to fit in that original housing. So, we might need to do some modifications, but I don't know if it's going to fit. Maybe not that one then. Time to ruin a perfectly good heat box. Well, I am super pleased at how well that's come out. This old motor here is from a Mitsubishi Shogun, I think it is, or a Mitsubishi Delica. They were used on a few different ones, but this is the rear heater. They are ridiculously cheap on eBay. I think I picked this one up for about £20. Trimmed it around the outside just to get it to fit where I wanted to, and also this plastic impeller, just had to shave a little bit off there just so that it would fit all nicely in the hole. Obviously cut the hole in there, and I've also welded in a few captive nuts just to retain that. And yeah, I am so pleased with how well that fits. You know, the depth, the size. It's about, what was it, about 85 watts that this one pumps out. So, I mean, it's not the 120 from the Ford unit, but it's definitely better than the 20 watts and that tiny little impeller from the original unit. So I think this is going to be awesome once it's in the car. Now, our next job to do is tidy up this rusty, horrible old heater box. And for those who've watched the channel a while, you know that I'm a big fan of giving old crap like this to someone else to sort out. So fingers crossed my powder coater can sort this one out for me. It's got some moving components, so I'm not sure what he's going to say about that. But at the very least, if he can blast it, and then I'll rattle can it. But yeah, fingers crossed he can get it all powder coated and looking beautiful. While that's away, getting sorted, we now need to look at how we're going to wire this in, because with a lot more power, you're not going to be able to stick it on the old wiring loom. So to get power into our new uprated blower motor, we've got two problems that we need to overcome. So the first one is, back in the day, they didn't really use relays for things like this, because it was only a handful of amps. They just used an uprated switch, so all the power would go from the battery through this switch and into the device that you're trying to control, be it our blower motor, windscreen wipers, lights, what have you. The second problem we've got to overcome is we actually want this to run at multiple speeds. So we've got slow speed and high speed. Now the way this is done conventionally today, but also back in the day, is to use what's called a fan speed resistor. Now this would go in series with your motor, and you either switch it in or switch it out based on the position of this switch. Now what that does is, when it's in series, it will actually take some of the energy, so this will heat up, so there's less energy going into the motor, the fan spins slower. Makes sense, right? Now, what's traditionally done these days, because we're talking about much higher power blower motors, is you'd have a fan speed resistor actually mounted into our casing, into that blower motor box. So as air's blowing over, it will then cool that down and allow it to run. Now, because these aren't actually that powerful, back in the day they just have it hanging out in the engine bay there, and it's fine. So both of these problems we need to overcome. There's a simple way and there's a complicated way, and we're going to use the complicated way. Now, this may petrify some of you. This is the more complicated way. If you want the super easy way, then get a couple of relays, get a fan speed resistor that looks a bit like that, connect it all together like that, easy peasy, you'll have it all working. I, however, am a bit of a geek, so I'm going to use this here, which is a motor controller. Now, how does it work? Well, it's got some MOSFETs, some switches that will PWM control this motor. How does it do that? Well, let's put some energy in here, and quite simply we've got our power supply connected, we've got our motor connected, and then this dial allows us to control how much energy we actually send to this. So it's really efficient, we're not very wasteful on that power, but also we've got, well, really as much control as we really need. Now, retrofitting this in the back of the dash is not the right solution. We want to use our original switch. So we're going to have to get a little bit clever about it. And the first thing that we've got to do is hack off this knob. So after a bit of fiddling around, we have off, slow speed and fast speed. However, this is a bit peculiar. It's not working quite how I thought it would. Also, because of that peculiarity, I can't quite get full beans out of this guy. It also made me think, actually the 20 watts that I quoted for this old one was no load, like this one is at the minute, i.e. it's not actually moving any air, it's not producing any real power. So I've powered this one on with its drum on, and that's about 50 watts that these ones give out. So 50 watts, 80 watts, these are really close now in terms of the amount of power that they were taking. So do I really need to go to all this trouble? Well, when you look at the original switch, a bit of digging around, not conclusive, but I'm pretty sure these can take about 10 amps, which means this switch can handle this motor as is. So as fun as this little project is, I've still got to find a way of fitting it into the car and mucking about with all the wiring, etc, etc. I think I might just go back to plan, well, over to plan C now, I guess, which is just fit it how it was in the car originally. Use the original switch. I'll get a resistor and we'll figure out how to put that in a little bit later. We'll get to that. And just use that, the wiring, easy peasy. Oh, that's a shame. I was kind of looking forward to this little experiment. One of the other things that crossed my mind in having that controller is, instead of having a switch with two positions, what I could do is, I know this is just a socket, but bear with me, is have a dial there where I could dial up and tune in any speed that I wanted, and maybe a push-pull to turn it on. Now, I was thinking, actually, that's a bit of faff, and it probably wouldn't look all that good, it wouldn't look original. But now I'm here, putting something next to all of this. Well, I don't know. We'll have to wait and see what I decide. So now the heater box is away getting powder coated. That's everything I can do engine bay side for now. It's time to turn our attention onto the interior. And that means actually connecting up these so they do something. But also, I want to get to something that's underneath here, which means taking apart the whole interior again. And it's these pipes here that, frankly, I've seen better days. So, managed to get some new ones. These are actually more tricky to get hold of than you might think in a reasonable price, because most of the stuff is all silicon and they want really big money for them. So I found these on Amazon. I'll put the link below so that you don't have to spend a fortune either. Right, let's get these in and get it all buttoned up. Now our center console's all back in, the last job that we've got to do in here is connect up these levers. Now, we've got the original Bowden cables. They're a bit grubby and, to be honest, they're a little bit stiff. Now, we could just put some oil down these, get them to lube up, and they'll probably be all right. But I think we can do one better. So I'm going to have a little bit of an experiment. The inners are basically just bits of wire, and then the outers are a tube to hold them. So I think I'm going to keep the inners, but replace the outers with some mountain bike gear cable. Why? These guys have got a Teflon coating on the inside, because when you're mountain biking you want really nice smooth gears, or road biking or any of that. So they've got really nice cables for cheap. Now why is this one white? Because why not? I thought I'd get a white one just so it looks cool. Or it doesn't look cool. You tell me down in the comments. I don't care. Well, we'll find out whether it looks cool or not. Anyway, we're going to try the white ones. There is one problem that I foresee we're going to run into, and that is one of these inners has got a fancy end, but as you can see, it's fallen off. So, going to have to fix that one too. And there we go, cables all installed. Now, while we've been doing that, the heater box is now back from the powder coaters, looking lovely. We've put all the seals on that. I've also fitted the valve. In order to fit that valve, I actually had to trim down the heat exchanger. Not a big job, but something we had to do. So you're probably asking the question of what did I choose to use to actually control this heater? Did I get really fancy, or did I just use the standard switch? Well, in the end, I went for simplicity and used the standard switch. Now I fitted a modern resistor actually into the heater box itself. Put the wiring, tidied all that up. That looks really lovely. So with all that done, the last thing that's left to do is to connect up the heater box to these controls and also to the engine so we get some heat. So we're out for our drive. I've just had a quick check to make sure there's no leaks. We had a little leak, just nipped that up. That's now fine. Engine's up to temperature. So let's see how good our new heater is, because it is super chilly at the moment. So let's turn the fan on. Let's turn the fan on. Full blow, I can hear that now. That's really going for it. Well, I mean, there's heat coming out, but actually, I don't know, that might clear the windscreen. Did I just do all that work for that?
Oh, for fuck's... So mixed results, really. So I drove around with the fans on low for quite a while, and I think where the car hasn't had any heaters or any fans for a while, it all started to mist up inside, because I think the car just needs a little bit of drying out. So we started to get mist all over the place. I then put them up to full, and where these vents are, it all cleared on the windscreen. So actually, it's kind of doing its job. Now, I probably have my expectations far too high and thinking of it like a modern car. And we haven't really done a full resto mod and taken something out of a modern car and put it into here. What we've done is taken the original heater system and just given it a little bit of a kick. So I think actually, for all intents and purposes, I mean, it's so much better than the original one was anyway when I first got the car. So yeah, I think overall, probably about a 7 out of 10, which for old cars, that's a result. Now, one reflection, should I have actually not used a switch and done that dial? No, not at all. There is so little difference, right, to be tuned there, that all you really need is those 2 speeds. So I'm glad I didn't go to the effort in the end of actually trying to fit all that in and be too clever. Yeah, 2 speeds is absolutely fine for this type of car. Now, could I make some improvements? I probably could actually. So I think the next thing to check is basically go through the whole system, all the joints and connections, because I think we're getting quite a few leaks, which is why we don't get quite the airflow that I was expecting to see. Now, everything's all back together. I don't really want to take it all apart now because I've got a load of other jobs on the docket that I want to get to and want to get some more videos out. So I think the next time I'm in there, whenever I get exposed to those areas, I'm just going to go through and check those as we go along. But for now, this is perfectly fine for driving around in the winter. So I think with that, we're going to leave this video here. Stay tuned for the next one because there are a few more things that I'm really excited to get onto. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you next time on Vic's Projects.